What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Be Sacred Space. Here we're all about self mastery, freedom, and co creating our desired realities. I am the creator of this beautiful, amazing, and lit space. My name is Bianca, but you can call me B, and I'm here to inform, support, and empower you on your unique journey. So please stick around. I promise you will not be disappointed. Oh my goodness, I am super excited. Today is a special episode of Be Sacred Space. Today we are having our very first special guest, Will Keller. Now, Will Keller is a freedom activist, an animist, anarchist, student, teacher of nature, and a father. Will is the co-host and producer of Natural Freedom League video series and a content creator for the One Great Work Network. Will Keller is devoted and morally obligated to increase awareness on the causal factor of suffering for humanity and to expand the understanding of the current human condition by educating the public on crucial topics such as conscious parenting, human psychology, human behavior, objective morality, natural rights, and natural law, the universal laws of nature. All of these topics are inseparable for understanding and achieving true freedom for humanity. And that's what we're all about here. So please give it up for our special guest, Will Keller. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
It's my pleasure, Bianca. I'm glad to be here at the Sacred Space and your first special guest. So it's an honor.
Thank you. So that was a pretty amazing intro, but can you just give my guests a little background about yourself, how you came to creating content, and where my viewers can find you at?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, my bio is kind of a mouthful. I got to get a shortened version. Simply put, I'm a moral educator and educator of nature, primarily the laws of nature, which are natural law. Um, so quick little bit of background. I was raised on a ranch, so I was very close to nature. I always had a an interest and a reverence for nature. Nature for me was, supreme authority. It was something outside and separate of human authority. I used to, when I was a teenager, I would see all these human constructs like public school, government, all of these things. And it just seems so out of balance with the rhythm of life, the natural flow of how nature operated. And even today, I say nature is the wisest mentor. So, growing up, coming into myself, coming of age, I definitely got into culture and became a musician. I was in the hip hop industry and R&B industry for 12 years. Did a lot of touring cross country. I went outside international, Southeast Asia, all over the place, all over the globe, which was a great experience that allowed me to get to know myself from a an egoic perception, and I mean that as in the self. Get to know myself in this reality, in the somatic sense. So there were a lot of lessons learned there, and it was a great experience. But I definitely transitioned out of that into fatherhood, and that was, the crux, the main application that kind of changed my whole life and my whole point of view. Shortly before becoming a father, I actually, and kind of transitioning from my music career, I was still very active in my music career, but I found myself into the black hole of addiction. And then becoming a father and still battling this, it forced me to look at myself at a deep level and climbing out of that hole and becoming a father. I took that information and that will to understand how I operated, and I applied that externally. So I got into topics such as spirituality. Occultism was a major factor, which led me on to some really great minds: Michael Tessarion, Jordan Maxwell, Mark Passio was one of my biggest influences, and the separation of breaking down, peeling off the veils of reality of how we think reality operates, ultimately led me to the moral obligation to speak out. It took me 2.5 years to actually kind of activate and execute. I went more of a anti-technology perspective, and I wanted to, head for the mountains and homestead, and it was a form of escapism, and I was stuck in there for about 2.5 years. Definitely Mark, lit the fire under my ass, and finally the pressure and the obligation and the responsibility and the accountability of speaking out and going public and teaching this information to inspire minds and try to activate minds. So that's where I'm at now. I've been a content creator publicly for almost 4 years now, and it's a process. It's a process of evolution, and the greatest gift is seeing people, starting to do the work, come online, and step into that public arena and talk about these vital topics for humanity.
Right on. Thank you for that. So this discussion has been months in the making. So I since coming on this path, I started my own spiritual journey and whatnot, and I move a lot on like intuitive things that I receive, and I don't know exactly what I was doing, but I remember just hanging out, and a thought was like, you need to reach out to Will Keller and have him on your show. And it was like, what? What? I'm still just a beginner. Like, I probably only had like 3 videos out at that time. But we met up, and it went really well. And, we've been like trying to, get this discussion out to the public. But, things happen in life. And so like we're here 3 months later, and it's such a pleasure because I was very nervous with, bringing on someone that I respect, and has like such amazing, like clean presentations, and you having the willingness to come on this show with me was amazing. But then like I reached out to you asking you for some advice and some tips on how to kind of really level up my content and stuff. And you were seriously like such a huge help. So thank you for all the work that you do. And thank you for providing me with the education that you did, and, just making that time for me. Like you were talking about living on a ranch growing up. So for the past 3 years, I was living on a 30-acre farm. And that's where I really started to learn about the concepts of permaculture. And I started realizing that a lot of the things that I've learned, a lot of the principles could be applied in like almost every aspect of life, just like natural law can be applied to like every aspect of life. So like living on a farm, on a homestead, really helped open my eyes to learning from nature and taking the wisdom from nature and applying it to other aspects of my life. So
Absolutely.
thank you again for sharing that. And so today this episode is all about conscious parenting and the key to creating a better world, which it is the parents, and how we raise our children is what reflects in what we see in reality. And so that is why we are going to be talking about conscious parenting today on this live, so that we can become better parents for our children, so that we can start creating a beautiful, better world for everybody who inhabits it. So what is conscious parenting? So I'm going to give you my definition of what conscious parenting is. And then, Will, if you have a definition that you like to use or you have something to comment, please feel free.
Cool.
So to me, conscious parenting is an action of guiding our children in mutual respect and understanding to provide them with proper education and a quality value system, so that they are thriving, moral, and exceptional individuals capable of handling life and its challenges and capable of creating the necessary change that are needed in order to build a better world.
Fantastic. Excellent. I love that definition. And I love how you started with it's an action, because absolutely it's an action, right? I look at it more as it's stewardship and it's a facilitation. And I like how you shared your story about, living on the farm, and I see that as first world. We kind of think, third world is a societal condition, where I see the third world is actually the cities that are detached from the first world of nature. Nature is the real world, and as parents, this is what we're here to do. We're here to give our offspring, the future of the species, the future of ourselves, to the tools to navigate reality, the first world, right? And the tools to operate themselves and come to know themselves. Your definition was fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, so I want to ask you, why do you believe that conscious parenting is so vital, especially in the times that we find ourselves in now?
Yeah, so I mean, this is what parenting is. It's the propagation of the species. Not just that's not just referring to a biological or genetic propagation. This is about consciousness, because when we break it all down and reduce it down, we are infinite consciousness having an experience. It's the most sacred process to have a child. It's the most important responsibility and duty to raise a child's awareness up to the level and during the time period where they become self-sufficient and autonomous. There's not a more important duty. And we, as a species in the aggregate, we've lost that. We've lost the knowledge, the know-how, and the awareness of the sacredness of becoming a parent and what that entails. So obviously we're in a condition of slavery, control, coercion, and duress. That needs to be understood right off the gate, that our situation in the aggregate for humanity it's not getting better. It has this progression of more control, more government. And why is this? Why does that happen? The most important question of why. And ultimately, when you reduce it down, right, human beings do not understand how to operate in this reality and what it means to be human. The reason they don't understand this is because of the lack of parental responsibility, of raising a child's awareness, giving the tool sets, the psychological, emotional, physical tool sets to become a true moral human being. Now, the controllers and the social engineers, they understand this information very deeply. So their influence on society, they know that if they can program and condition people are going to have children, and that ignorance and that negative knowledge, incorrect knowledge, is going to be propagated and passed down to their children. So now you're creating a conveyor belt. You're creating a system of propagation, immoral propagation, condoning and based in violation of natural rights, and complete ignorance of natural law, of nature, the first world, how things operate. And that's the self as well. The self and reality are one and the same. So it's important that if we say we want to create freedom, right, in our reality, within our own lives, but in reality as well, we need to understand these causal factors. And the root of the problem is incorrect parenting. Because if parents aren't correctly educating their children and being that example, then we are constantly playing catch up from the millions of parents that are not correctly educating their children, right? So the process of playing catch up, it's just putting us deeper and deeper into the hole, right? We're in a negative state. So we need to climb out of that. We need to get to at least par. And the only way we're going to do that is if parents understand what it means to be a stewardship, a facilitator of a young mind, a young being, and activate themselves through, correct education, moral education. So it's vital. It's vital. And, the journey it's fun. you get to know yourself on a deeper level. Your kids will teach you about yourself. And this is what consciousness does. Consciousness is the will, the force that pushes, the forward force that pushes consciousness to expand, to replicate, to for more complexity, uniqueness, beauty. And this is, as human beings, this is what we do, right? A man and a woman come together. That's sacred. They have the ability to create a child, which is a fractal of themselves. It's like a fractal of consciousness. So that itself is a process of evolution. It's just a shame that, through the ignorance of this knowledge, that there's no forward progress. We're in a de-evolution. We're in the evolution force, which is the breaking down of consciousness, the stagnation of consciousness. And even though biological genes can be propagated forward, that doesn't mean that one is evolving, because it always starts in consciousness, in the state of mind. So it's a big topic. It's a big topic.
Most definitely. Like, there's no way that we could, uncover and speak about everything that it comes to with being a parent and, raising moral children and stopping this immoral generations that keep propagating on and on. I was just having a discussion with a friend last night, and we were talking about, how our family members have dealt with certain situations in their lives. And then that has repeated through, their children and eventually to us. And I was telling her it's up to us to say, hey, like, that stops here. We're breaking that cycle and we have to move on and do better. And even though that applied to that situation, that applies just to parenting in general, is that for me, I believe the whole way that we look at parenting, like right now, needs to kind of just be tossed out the window, and a new structure needs to come in, because I think we're doing so bad at being good parents, being quality parents. I mean, when I had my daughter, I was still lost in the sauce, and I went through, what people believe is how you normally raise a kid. I went to the doctors and I've had the normal checkups and all of that stuff. And I had my birth in a hospital, and I allowed them to, kind of set the time when she was going to come out. And then immediately I signed her rights away to the state, and she continued to get vaccinated and all of this stuff. And I continued to do that, where I now am looking back, and my daughter was affected by the vaccines and the quality of food that I gave her. And I am paying for that now and catching up with trying to now be a better mother for my daughter and reclaim her rights, and to heal her immune systems like I should have did at the beginning. But I didn't know any better, because I was just doing what my mom did and what my grandparents did and what their grandparents did. Like, we continue these cycles without questioning if it's right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, well said. I mean, modern parenting currently, it's more of it's simulation is what it is, right? When you look at simulation, there's also the definition of simulation is an imitation of something. Now, this has a negative and positive connotation, right? People think, oh, we're living in a simulation. No, it's not a computer algorithm. It's an imitation, meaning as above, so below, right? So we are in the image of nature. But with parenting, it's the negative connotation of simulation, meaning that it's a split image of who their parents are. So it's more of like a duplication, right? It's not a raising up. This is what it means to raise a child, meaning you raising their awareness up. And it's important to know, because I've obviously, conscious parenting is a huge part of my work, that I have had parents get frustrated by their past actions and what they've done to their children. And this is not the point of the information. The point of the information is to educate people right now, meaning the past has happened, that needs to be accepted and integrated, but the awareness and the action needs to come in the present moment, right? Like you have educated yourself, you have reached a higher state of awareness, and now you are activated and you are applying that to your children. That is vital. That is such a shift in consciousness, a shift in energy, that you are doing your children now a great service by shifting your awareness, regardless what has happened in the past, right? The past is the past. So when I talk to a lot of parents, a lot of parents are discouraged, and they kind of look down on themselves. I totally understand that, right? There is no perfection in this reality except natural law. But the generational programming of parents, this is what needs to be stopped, right? Like you were saying, the transference of mind control is just at an all-time high. And the programming and the conditioning of parents, this is the problem. Even when a parent is coming into higher awareness, they have these triggers of just what is ingrained within their being, of how they were raised and how tradition and their family has their grandparents, etc. The information, this programming needs to be unprogrammed and unlearned first, right? You have to empty out the dirty water to fill it with clean water, so to speak, and as an analogy. And this is obviously the first step, right? Is to unlearn the negative knowledge and deprogram yourself and decondition. So I totally agree with you. Modern parenting needs to be thrown right out the window. Everything that people think they know about parenting needs to be completely erased and start from scratch.
Agreed. And so, like, I'm super big on the concept of unlearning and relearning. For us adults, for the kids, even our children, we have to constantly let them know that there's a lot of false information out here, and that you have to constantly be unlearning what you were taught and relearn through learning to think for yourself and learning to educate yourself on what is truth. And so for me, I think it is so vital for conscious parenting and creating a better world, because now we live in a time where families and households are broken. Like, that is a common thing. Co-parenting is being normalized. Absent parent are normalized. We willfully and ignorantly give the rights of our children away to the state right after they're born. Public schooling and social media has more influence in our children's lives than the family structure and the value system. So like, we live in a time where our house is so divided and dysfunctional. And this leads to the increase in mental health issues and identity issues, low self-esteem, low expectations of life, as well as a rise in immoral behaviors, beliefs, and damaged psyches, and the perpetuation of this cycle after, generations after generations. And it is important to understand that the household shapes who the individual becomes. It shapes their character. So if we want to raise individuals who are resilient, moral, happy, healthy, and thriving adults, then we have to take control of our household in the family dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. The family dynamic is the first structure that a being comes to learn and embody, right? This is in the formative years, the years that lay down the operating system on how the being is going to operate. I mean, it is vital. And it's all about our relationship. I mean, in this reality, it's all about relationships. Relationship to yourself, relationship to nature, relationship to truth, relationship to principles, right? Relationship to friends, acquaintances, the public, your children. So I always ask someone, a parent, to evaluate your relationship with your child. And it definitely, I talk about the objective principles of conscious parenting in my work, meaning that there are principles that are objective that every parent needs to understand and educate their child with, right? These principles of reality. Parenting styles can vary. This is the beauty of it, right? There's unlimited styles. Parents, they kind of want the all-in-one format of how to do things, and everyone's situation is different. There needs to be brutal honesty where the relationship and where a family is at. Like you said, co-parenting is the norm. I mean, it's incredible. This is by design, right? I mean, the the breakdown of the family dynamic is one of the greatest injustices that our species has ever faced. Because as soon as you break that family dynamic down, now, I mean, if the foundation is fractured, the structure will crumble. And this is what the
Agreed.
family is. I'm in a co-parenting situation, and hey, it can be brutal. It can be brutal at times. I'm extremely grateful that that my partner, my daughter's mother, and we see eye to eye on many principles, which is great, which is good. I mean, we weren't in a relationship um, uh, for 3 years, but we decided to live together because our daughter was still in the formative years, and we wanted that family dynamic, that structure, to be there. After the formative years, by just certain experiences and causalities, we went our separate ways, but still that family dynamic is still there. And with how people operate nowadays, especially in co-parenting situations where everything is done out of spite, the child is not put first, the relationship has broken down between mother and father, which is exactly where the social engineers want it. If they can put a wedge between mom and dad, that affects the child or the children dramatically. And that's where they want families at.
Which I've seen on both spectrums, but I unfortunately I've met a lot of men who wanted to be active parents in their child's lives, but because the mother was being spiteful, withheld the child from their father, which
Mm-hmm.
is like, it's quite shameful. Like, I am quite very ashamed of women these days. But I have two children. My oldest child, her biological father is has never been in the picture. And then I have my youngest son, and we have I have a co-parenting relationship with him, and it's good. It's good. It's not like perfect, because I don't think any relationship could be really perfect, but it's a lot better than we had expected. Because when I was pregnant, I really started to understand that his beliefs and values were not the same as mine. So we like butted heads. Like, one of the main things we butted heads was about birth certificates and social security cards. And so then, like, we kind of clashed a lot during my pregnancies. And then shortly after our son was born, we really like kind of put all the pettiness aside and really started showing up together for our son and raising our son. And we started developing like a really good relationship. And we try to do things together, even though we are not together. We still hang out as a family the best that we can. So it really is important that if you are in a co-parenting relationship, that you do the best that you can to have a decent relationship with the co-parents, because our relationships with the other affects our children greatly.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it was all by design. I was raised in a single mother household. Like, that's what I know. And that's kind of what I put myself in the position of. But I had to recognize that this was, kind of like a cycle and a pattern that I was repeating myself. And so I have an open door policy, I don't know if that's the right word, for my daughter's father. If he ever does decide to come in, I will never reject him because he decided to be absent out of her life, even up to this time. And I do try to keep an open relationship with like an open communication with my daughter, because she is of the age of 8, so she does ask questions. And so when she asks questions about him, I never speak out of spite. When I talk to other people about him, I never speak out of spite. I never say anything like bad about him. I understand that, sometimes you're just not ready to be a parent. Sometimes situations happen and some people just cannot show up. And so I will never drag his name through the dirt. I will never talk bad about him to my daughter, because if ever she decides to try to pursue that relationship, or they try to pursue a relationship with each other, I want to have the least amount of influence, a negative influence with my daughter and her potential father. For me, I'm actually very lucky. I have a best friend who has been in my daughter's life since she was 2, and he kind of takes on that father role. So even though she doesn't have her biological father, she does have a father figure in her life.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. And I can relate to that. That's how my childhood was. My parents had a brutal divorce and a separation when I was 2 years old, and my younger brother was one. And but my dad met my stepmom, and my biological mom was kind of out of the picture for most of my childhood. She was out of state. We only saw her every once in a while. So my stepmom, I called her mom ever since I was a young child. She stepped up, and she what's filled that motherly space, and I'm super grateful for that. And that's something that people need to consider. I mean, especially nowadays, where single parents, they still lack that knowledge of self, so they externalize, thinking that they just get in a relationship, right? They bounce from relationship to relationship, like that's going to fill a void of the lack of self-knowledge and self-awareness. And but you're bringing someone into your child's life that has a profound effect, meaning either there's a good relationship where it's a good influence, or there's the lack of. But regardless, that person is still in your child's life. So I think that's we need to get we need to get to spiritual adulthood. And the things that you just said in your last comment, where you don't talk bad or negative about your daughter's father, I think that's huge. That is huge in society now, where mothers are subsidized, right? They're paid to follow through in the separation, where emotional stability for men and women is at an all-time low, where the young child is more mature than their parents, right? Because the parents have all this programming and conditioning that they're triggered and they're acting upon. I mean, it's really disgusting. So it comes down to the principles, right? Even the principles of reality. Like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? And I've seen men that they just throw in the towel when the separation goes sour, and the mother is withholding the child, which absolutely is an immoral action. But as a man, you must fight as long and as hard as possible for your children, right? And I don't see that in a lot of relationships. Not a blanket statement. I know a lot of good fathers out there and good mothers. I'm just speaking in the uninitiated masses, right? Where fathers throw in the towel and mothers operate out of spite. It's common. It happens. Everyone's heard stories about this kind of stuff, and it's just spiritual immaturity. Not a good sign.
Definitely not. Something that really inspired me with co-parenting a relationship was that my youngest son, his parents are divorced, but they still do things together for the kids. Like if the kids have like a birthday or some type of event, like both of the parents always show up, and they were always like mutually respectful. And I was just like, wow, like that's amazing. Like I really loved, I mean, I'm sure they went through their own trials and tribulations with getting to that point, but they're at the point where they can both show up together for their children. And I love that. And I inspire to do that with my children's father. And right now, like I said, me and my youngest father, child's father, we have such a good relationship. And I mean, we spent, my child will be 2 next month. Majority of the time of being pregnant and having my son, we were not together. So the co-parenting has kind of been from the beginning. But I think we've been doing an amazing job, especially because, like, bless this man. He might be watching right now. uh I do have like my own set, like, things that, like, I won't bend on. And one of the things is like, I can't give my child to the state. Like, that was something that I drew in a line and was saying that I'm not doing that anymore. And so I know for him, coming from the traditional background and growing up like how we just normally do things, like, I know that was very difficult for him and he didn't understand. But I mean, he's been very patient. We've been working on securing other legal documents of claiming our son that is not through the government. And so it's been like, I'm truly blessed that he works with me, even though, like, my views and opinions are, kind of, for him, out there. So I've been
Sure.
very grateful for that. But I want to talk about, you had mentioned, like, how people get out of relationships and they get into relationships, and like that's a cycle. And that's
Mm-hmm.
especially a cycle for, like, my generation and the generation under us, where we go through these heartbreaks, we go through these separations, and instead of dealing and healing what we experience, we just jump into another relationship. And that's cool and all if that's what you want to do, but if you have children, you cannot do that. You need
Mm-hmm.
to be more conscious about that. So I just want to give a warning out to any woman who comes across this live. If that is what you're doing and you have children, you need to stop. Like, because you don't know who you're bringing into your child's life. You don't know what their intentions are for you and your children. And so it's best to not just be jumping in and out of these relationships because you feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
You ultimately have to think about what's best for your children and not what's best for your temporary emotions.
Well said. Yeah, no, that's vital. That's absolutely vital. People are scared of pain, right? So when they get out, when they have a breakup, depending on how brutal it is, right? That pain, they don't want to pursue that pain, and they don't want to contemplate it and apply introspection. They just want to cover it up. They want to put the band-aid on. So they just, they bounce around to relationship like another person is going to fill that void, right? And as you know, Bianca, you cannot give someone something you yourself do not have, right? So um, the process of self knowledge needs to really be embraced. And hey, parents, you only got 10 years. I mean, if it, and I can dive into this a little deeper, right? From birth to about nine, 9 to 10, right? Those are the crucial years where your child is all yours, right? Maybe even a little bit younger, 8, right? As soon as they get in 9 and 10, now their age is increasing, um, their capacity for higher order thought function is increasing, their autonomy is increasing, their sovereignty is increasing, and guess what? Now you've switched roles, and your child must be respected as an independent being, right? Sure, you're still, you still provide the house and you're cooking dinners and stuff like that, but I'm talking about psychologically and emotionally. They have to be respected. It's completely different from when they were a baby in the formative years. So, 9 years, you have that time period where your child is fully 100% yours, and then they are becoming into their own being, their own self. And that is a whole different category, the coming of age that parents need to really contemplate. And we see this programming and conditioning being played out even in the adolescent years, right? 10, 11, 12, 13, where I'm still the authority over you. Do what I say because I say so. We still see that, right? As for kids that are teenagers. If you're going to have that last lack of respect and trust for your child, then you're going to get something as the rebel, the lashing out. Because as we know, you try to control and restrict anything, it's going to fight against that, right? That's a form of slavery. So and any living being will defend themselves from that, and children are no different. If you show them no respect and no trust, then they will lash out and they will act out. And this is where you get lying. They call traditionally it's looked at as a stage of adolescence. Oh, the rebellious years, right? They're going to rebel against their parents. This is a programmed, conditioned response that the parents are initiating, and the child is responding to the lack of from their parents. And this is crucial. But 10 good years, and when I see parents that are bouncing around from relationship to relationship to fill those voids, it's absolutely a disjustice to your children.
Which is what the children pick up and repeat when they are of the age as well. Like, we really have to be conscious of what we do, what we say, how we show up for our children, because they're constantly watching us. I mean, throughout our time together, our kids are constantly watching us, learning and adapting. And so if that is how we are showing up, that is how our children are going to show up. And I
Absolutely.
see that, unfortunately, I see that a lot with just not great actions. Like, I don't know, I see a lot of, when I see parents and I know like their history and how, they had multiple partners, I do see that reflecting in how the child later, as they get older, and how they approach relationships. Um, So I think that's like a good segue to talk about like some topics and issues that everyone may not be, ready for. And that's okay, because we must be okay with coming face to face with uncomfortable truths so that we can raise moral and thriving individuals. And that is the deliberate attack and the breakdown of the family unit and in the attack on our children, which I know can be hard at first, especially to recognize when the deliberate attack has been happening for generations. And the only way that we can really stop this perpetuation going is to bring it to awareness and face it head on. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are so many ways that they are attacking our families and attacking our children, and far way deeper than we can talk in one show. But I just want to speak on a couple of things. And if you have anything that you want to add, please feel free. But I want to start talking about, the birthing system and how we bring children into the world, and how how the woman is treated when they're pregnant, and all of the unnecessary things they put women through. So like, it seems normal for people to go to these normal checkups and to have all these testings done, um, and whatnot, but that is actually disrupting the pregnancy and the birthing process. So when I was pregnant with my son, I had got a midwife this time, and we did very like limiting visitations. She was absolutely amazing. Little like side note, I remember interviewing her, and she was great. And the last thing I said to her was like, the only thing is you can't wear mask here. And she was like, oh my goodness, thank God I had to let someone go, because they were like really like, on that bandwagon. So she was amazing. But we did no testing. I mean, I did get my iron checked out because I was very low before I got pregnant. So we wanted to boost my iron up, so I was prepared to deliver my son. But that was the only testings that I got, was to just check my iron. I didn't get an ultrasound. I just let everything be natural, which was amazing. But right now, like, it is so normal for doctors to intervene in the woman's pregnancy. Like, the thing is like, our bodies are so amazing and magical that the body already knows exactly what it needs to do. And the body will tell you if there's something wrong so you can address it. And so that doesn't mean that you don't have to have any type of medical support when it comes to pregnancy, but we need to stop letting them have so much influence during our pregnancies. And then on top of that is how our babies are delivered. And it's like we get these due dates, and these are just estimations, but the baby can come wherever it wants to. So I know a lot of people feel pressured when they're at the hospital and they are pushed Pitocin. I think that's what it is that speeds up the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
They persuade you on how you push your baby out, laying down on the bed, which is the least natural way for a baby to come out. As well as, they kind of push epidurals. And so, like, this is a direct attack on our families, starting right off the jump. On top of that, right after we have our babies are being harassed by four to five people at a time, getting wiped down, getting kind of separated from the mother. I mean, I see horrible videos where mothers are asking for the umbilical to stay attached, and they are violating the mother's rights, and they're cutting the umbilical cord. They're vigorously rubbing off of all of the coating that comes on the baby. Separating the moms, forcing the moms to sign their children to the state, on top of injecting our babies and shooting them up. Like, we have to say enough is enough and start making our own way of bringing our children into the world that is not, what do I want to say, disruptive by these medical systems.
Well said. Excellent. That's where it starts. I mean, obviously, it starts even before birth, right? In the mind of the individuals when, two individuals come together, right? But yes, for the parenting aspect, the modern birthing system is a trauma. It's a trauma system. That's what it does. Well, first of all, birth itself is a trauma bond. Now, positive or negative, the positive trauma bond is obviously the natural method based in truth, where a child is born and, immediately connects or continues to connect with the mother, right, and the father during that process. But like everything that you list was a negative trauma experience, which ultimately creates disassociation in the child right off the bat, right, with the vitamin K shots. C-section is almost the norm nowadays, yes. Right? I mean, it's actually promoted. And it's the fear. It's where this comes from. Ignorance and fear, right? Obviously, all fear is based in ignorance. But women have lost their true essence when it comes to birth, where the feminine essence of being pregnant and being in labor and having that experience, where modern society has broke down that essence, where women are scared of labor and of pregnancy in this time period. So they abdicate their responsibility off to quote unquote experts, excuse me, or authorities, right? And this, epidurals, ultrasounds, all this kind of stuff. Absolutely. It's such a negative experience. So you said it very well. I mean, in reality, the realm of the real, right? The mother gives birth to the child. Immediately, the child is placed on the mother's chest to transition the baby into, the physical world, gently, right? And the father protects that ceremony. That's what the father does. I was very blessed that even though I didn't have a full awareness of the birthing process, we came across this midwife. She was fantastic. So we had a natural birth, a delayed cord cut. I caught my daughter. There were no doctors at all. It was in a private facility. We had a room all to ourselves. There were only two other nurses that just stood against the wall, and they were there like just in case the midwife needed help. It was such an intimate and beautiful process. I'm really blessed, that this midwife was there. She even told us, she told me, don't let the child out of the mother's sight or away from the mother. And, I was like, yeah, for sure, and that was her kind of giving me the look like, don't let a doctor come in here and try to take your child, or a nurse. So, we didn't do any shots or anything like that. But see, that's where the programming and the conditioning come in, where people think this is how it's supposed to go because this is how it's always been. And they're flat out wrong. And we're seeing the negative consequences of those effects, right? Some of the other attacks that I'll touch on is obviously, culture itself. Now, modern culture in itself, the concept is actually neutral in my opinion, right? Culture means to cultivate. Yes, cult is in the word culture, or culture, but it means to cultivate. So what are you cultivating? Are we cultivating moral principles and right action and higher awareness? No, that's not what humanity is cultivating. Are we cultivating ignorance, illusion, fear, control, duress? Absolutely. So it all depends on the context of what is being cultivated. And modern culture absolutely is cultivating the negative experiences. A lot of my homeschoolers and unschooler parents will relate to this, right? How many times do we get the question, oh, well, your child's going to be like weird and not sociable, right? And it's such a just an ignorant comment, right? Like we keep our kids locked in a closet, right? Or in the
Right?
house. Like it just shows you the lack of knowledge and awareness that people have. Now, guess what? My daughter, yeah, she's not going to be like all the other kids. That's the point. Not to assimilate our children into modern culture and into the programming and conditioning that is so prevalent in today's world, right? They are going to be different, right? So, I mean, that's the whole point, because we're trying to raise our children with correct moral principles. And hey, that goes against the grain of modern society. So there's a lot of obfuscation and misdirection and, flat out attacks on parents that do not assimilate and atomize their children into the quote unquote, Borg collective that is going on. Of course, another topic is the public schooling system. I mean, really, every category of society is immoral and going against nature and truth. But the public education system, indoctrination, obviously, is not a natural state of learning for human beings. Human beings learn, like when they truly learn and take in and actually and resonate and hold information, is when they're internally motivated. And this is not what public schooling does. Obviously, it's all about memorization and atomizing and obedience. So even the format and the curriculum of how education is promulgated is incorrect and is illusory, right? Of course, once you understand the history of public education and where, especially in America, where it comes from and who created it and how it's been promoted, then you quickly understand that there is a prime objective, and that is to create obedient slaves. And this is where parents need to educate themselves on every topic, especially when it comes to learning. And what is learning? Like, I like to simplify my work, right? Bring it down to the philosophical principles and attributes. Like, okay, you want your child to be educated. What is education? What is learning? How does one learn? It's like those questions right there that's the foundation. And parents don't ask those big questions, those deep questions to themselves. They just abdicate that to someone else. So they are sacrificing their children to the state and to modern culture. And this is the problem, right? There's that lack of responsibility, the ability to respond to being a parent. So there's a couple for you.
Yes, I definitely want to talk about the education system. I am a homeschooler. My homeschooling journey actually started when I was in high school. I didn't have my children in high school, but I remember being in high school and asking my mom, like, can I be homeschooled? And she couldn't because my mom was a single mom to three kids. So she was working numerous jobs and just couldn't, she didn't have that time. And I don't even think she would even have the ability to be a teacher to me, which now looking back, I wouldn't want my mom to be a teacher. but, I remember being in school and just like these people don't care about us. Like I actually do have a video of the reasons why I started homeschooling. I haven't released it yet, but it is on cue. But at a young age, I realized that the school system did not have my best interest at heart. Like, I did terrible in school. I failed a bunch of classes, not because I was dumb, but I just didn't care. Nothing really, inspired me in school. Like, I was forced to take classes that had no interest. Most of my education, anyone that I've talked to, most of your education, you don't recall or you don't use it in the real life. And so at that time, I was just like, if I ever have kids, they're going to be homeschooled. And so I had my daughter, and that was still my intentions, but I was still very much asleep to what was going on in the world. And then I was not asleep, and I realized how harmful and destructive the public system is to our individuals. And I know that a lot of us like to believe that the public school has our children's best interests at heart. And I know we like to believe that genuine people truly do care about our children's educations. But to believe this is to continue to claim willful ignorance, which is what we do when we refuse to look in what is going on with our children's education. So if we say that we love and we care for our children, we want to give our children the best, then why are we still choosing to be ignorant when it comes to our children's education? So I urge anyone to look at the downfalls of the Common Core curriculum, which they push in all public schoolings, the amount of sexual misconduct that happens between teachers and staffs, including other kids as well, the skyrocketing numbers of cases of bullying, the decline in mental health and self-esteem. Like, there's no more denying the harmful effects of public schooling and what it is doing to our children. And I know it's not easy, especially when we do have to make money to, operate in this realm of existence currently. But what's more important, providing financially or raising moral and independent and capable children? And so I know it's hard, but Mark Passio says this when he was talking about how he kind of quit his job and allowed the universe to kind of carry him and let him do the great work. And I can vouch for this is when my daughter was 2, I quit my job and became a stay-at-home mom. And it's not always been easy, and it has its points of struggle, but I've always been taken care of. I've always been able to provide a roof over my children's head, and I've always been able to be their teachers. Like, we are their first teachers, and it is up to us to educate them. Not that other people will not educate our children, because even us as adults, we are always learning, but we have to be the first one to teach them core principles and values and, true education and how to think for themselves if we really want to do better for our children.
Well said. Absolutely. And something I talk about is obviously I mentioned relationship, and this is what it comes down to. Now, I understand for some co-parents, unschooling, homeschooling isn't an option. Either, one of the parents wants to, the other does not. Even, maybe they've been through the court system and it ruled against them. Whatever the excuse may be, right? I mean, again, this is going to be different for every single person. But regardless, even if your child is in public school and you're in the process, or you can't get that switched, you are still the influencer, right? Meaning, what is the relationship that you have with your child? Now, of course, the reason why it's 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 12 years, why this is how the schooling system is, right? Plus homework and all this stuff for public education is because they want time. Time equates to influence. So the more your child or children are spending in public school, that the more influence they are going to have potentially, right? But regardless, the parents are still the parents, and they have a say in that, and a major influential role. And that's, where I come down and talk about just relationships in general. So that's important for people to know. I'll give a few resources for people that are, trying to get their kids out of the public system, or, trying to communicate to the other parent. Obviously, John Taylor Gatto, fantastic. Dana Martin, fantastic. Lainey Liberty, she does a lot of work with teens. Great work. And my good friend David Rodriguez, which he actually works with parents to get children graduated early and to get them out of the public education system. And he's just a wealth of information. So those are good resources, because I get it. Everyone's situation is different. People might not have the ideal situation. There are options. There is education, even from a parental standpoint, to another parent, right? Educating the other parent on moral principles, or the education system in general. There's other options. There are Waldorf-inspired schools. There are charter schools. Another great one for people to look into are forest schools, which their curriculum is self-directed, which is ultimately a natural modality of learning, is when the curriculum is self-directed learning, meaning whatever your child is interested in, you provide the resources, and you promote that, right? And, young kids, their interests go all over the place. That's the point, right? They want to experience everything. Ultimately, the world, life itself, is the schoolyard, is the playground, right? And interacting with it is where you're going to learn the lessons. And even on the trivium and the quadrivium, these are the curriculums right then and there that a parent needs. So I would highly recommend people check into those resources.
So, my approach to homeschooling is life schooling and child led. So, we focus on like the basics of, basic math and reading and communication. And like, then we include like life skills, like house management, because I do believe that building a strong family foundation and unit is so vital for allowing my children to be free individuals in the world, because I want them to show up as their best. But I talk to my daughter a lot when we do schooling. It's like, what are you interested in? What do you want to learn and stuff? And my daughter, like, she's 8 years old, and she's always talking to me like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I'm like, you're still 8. Like, you have plenty of time to figure out what you want to be. But then she'll tell me, like, I think I want to be a dance teacher. And so now she's in dance. Like, I do whatever that she feels like she wants to have an interest in. And I try to help her pursue those, because so often as parents, I know we do our best to like prevent our children from having disappointment, to being hurt. But a lot of the times, the way that we talk to to our children, is the way that we encourage them, is so discouraging. We tell them to play it safe, that, just go to college, get a job, work your way up and stuff. But that's not the only way that you can, make a living and, survive in this world. And if I feel like people would be more happier if they were if they were encouraged to pursue the things that really like made them happy, which is authentic to them. So yeah, the education system is such a big factor when it comes to how we raise our children, because like you said, like children spend 7 to 8 hours 5 days a week in school. That means that somebody else has more influence over your children than you do. And not only that, our children are also around other peers who are receiving the same education, who are dealing with their own family stuff. And now that is an influence on our children's behaviors as well. So, honestly, parents, please, if you have not thought about it, please start looking into taking your children's education back into your own hands and stop just trusting in these public school systems to provide your children with the best education. And
Well
so
said. Absolutely.
another aspect that is affecting the family dynamic is media. And this has been used as a weapon on the family unit. And children and young adults are like the easiest targets. Their minds are still developing and learning. And if they see anything of influence and not properly taught how to discern information, can easily persuaded in certain views and beliefs or behaviors, especially when the child starts hitting like an independent stage and the household unit is not as important for them because they are, starting to explore out. And so now more than ever, we can see the impact of media and how it has on the development of individuals. And individuals will do repeat anything that they see and hear, which is dangerous because there's so much horrible agendas that are placed in the media right now that just destroys the individual's character, their morality and consciousness.
Absolutely. Yeah, great topic. And some of these agendas are full-fledged and having a big impact on growing minds. I think it's important to understand that media needs to be looked at as another method of education, right? Um, Again, the context of media comes into play, right? Like, what is your child watching? How much time is involved and all this kind of stuff. I see a lot of parents even using the media tool as a controlling device, meaning they self use that, if you don't do what I say, I'm taking the iPad away, etc., etc. But yet there still needs to be that education there where you are educating your child on what it is. What is the media, right? What is entertainment? And shocker, once your child gets into the adolescent stage where they're, becoming their own, they're coming of age. This is what I was talking about as their autonomy is increasing and must be respected. So if they want to watch certain things, there has to be a level of respect. Now, this does not negate that there's no education there, right? Let's just say, we have not watched the new Barbie movie, right? But if your child wants to watch the Barbie movie, there should be a level of education, right? So there's that balance of obviously not letting harm be infiltrated into your child's mind. But then again, fully restricting media will have a negative consequence on your child as well. Again, depending on what age. If we're talking about a young child where in the formative years, I mean, you have 100% control on what your child's going to watch and for how long. When you get into the adolescent stages, right, it's different. It shifts. So that's important to know. But with these agendas, again, this is what entertainment is. It's entrapment for the mind. And with all the subliminal messaging and symbols and stuff like this, they absolutely want to influence. And the question comes to how much time and what is the context. And this is stuff that parents really need to understand. It's a tricky balance, especially in this day and age, the age of information, the digital realm. My perspective has shifted quite a bit the last couple years, especially coming from one extreme of the polarity where I was very much anti-technology to now in more middle of the road where education is important. There's going to be absolutely no way, unless you're living out, in the mountains, completely detached from society, that your child is not going to interact with media or technology. And for me, that's the opposite extreme of the polarity. The middle ground is educating your child what it is, what a device is, what it does, what is media, etc. Tell them the truth about certain programs and influences and messaging. I think this type of education is extremely important. You're trying to give your child the tools of critical thinking so they can themselves recognize what the message of a piece of media is. That's ultimately the goal. We're not going to be there to shelter and protect our children, for that long. Again, only about 10 years, and then they're off on their own in some form or fashion. So education by far is definitely the modality.
Oh, most certainly. And, like you said, being truthful and being honest with our kids, like, we need to stop coddling them. We need to stop, what, what was the word you said? Just being overbearing, and allow them to have access to these tools, because, like you said, unless you are living completely like off grid, media is everywhere. So I'm very honest with my daughter to the age that is appropriate for her. I try to continue to remind her that not everything that you see on TV, on media, is true. Do not take everything for face value. You always need to learn to think for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
which is hard because she's still got a very young mind. So she'll
Sure.
see something and she takes it as true, but it's a constant like reminder of what media was put there for us. And I like what you were saying about, like, how you've adjusted your views. Like, I think it's so important as parents, but people in general, is that we must be constantly learning and adapting and adjusting. Like, just because you have a certain belief or a stance on something doesn't mean that some information or some view will come across. Hold on. Doesn't mean that you won't later change your mind. Like, there were a lot of things that I was set on. Like, when I first started this journey, I was against technology as well. Um, it was very limited in the house. I didn't really have a phone. I didn't have a computer or a tablet or anything. And now I find myself in the exact opposite of where I was, several years before. So as a parent, we must be constantly, adjusting and adapting with ourselves and as well as with our children. Like, our children are so resilient. Our children are capable of handling truth. Our children are capable of having, an awareness of what is going on in the world. We cannot dump everything onto our children, but when we start having those conversations, these are going to help them be critical thinkers later in life.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with you. This is what we're here to do, right? I mean, both extremes of the polarity, whether one is completely ensconced in technology, all the time, that kind of way of life, and then on the opposite extreme of a complete luddite, off grid, they're both harmful to your children, right? The middle balance is where you want to be, because modern literacy obviously includes technology. So when my daughter was young in the formative years, we didn't have a TV in the house, so technology was very limited. But now that she's 10 and she's becoming into adolescence, right? And I'm obviously a content creator. I'm very much into technology. The education there for her is important. Like you said, becoming a critical thinker, and that is vital. They have. It's not about them becoming an imitation of us. It's about giving them the tools so they can become their own person, but their own thinker, to have their own conscious and exercise their own conscious. It's giving them those modalities and tool sets.
Agreed. So, something I want to kind of go off with media, that I think is important to talk about, and I don't know if it's really appropriate to add to here, but I do want to bring this out. With media, comes the overexposure of sexuality. And we as parents are failing our children in this education, in this area. So we allow the school, we allow media, we allow the pressures of the peers to influence and educate them. And without proper education on, sexuality, our children are hooking up earlier and earlier and having children at very young age. I think the youngest age someone has had a child is 11 years old. Um, Children need this time to grow and to experience life and to develop into an emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual maturity. And so we as parents are failing to recognize the dangers of, improper education on sex and the overexposure of sexuality. And because of that, we are failing to prepare our children for the agenda that is at hand, which this increase the risk of disease, unplanned pregnancies, um, sexual abuse, decline in mental health, increase in broken homes, which again, there's no way that a child can raise another child. And as the parent is still developing and learning about themselves and the world around them, they cannot provide their offsprings with the proper foundation to raise well-rounded individuals. And so, oh my goodness, I think my daughter was 3 years old and we were at the playground, and I'm telling you, these kids must have been like 10, 11, if that. And they were talking about hooking up and everything. And I was mortified. Like,
Mm.
this is the reality of things. And I know, especially when I was in high school, um, just the peer pressure of having sex and whatnot was so high. I mean, at that time, 16 and pregnant, teen mom started coming out on show, which again is an agenda to,
Mhm.
push like these pregnancies at a young age. But we, as a lot of us as adults, shouldn't be having children. So why should our children be having children when they don't have the proper education and the tools to raise children? And so that's just one of the things that I it's been on my heart for so long, and I've wanted to talk about. And like, this isn't a direct attack on our children. And so, like, we as parents need to do better with providing our children with the proper education, especially when it comes to media. Sex is all over the place in media. Sex is in kids' TV shows. Sex is in advertisement. Like, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely prevalent. And who who is going to educate your child on the topic of sex, right? That's a question that parents need to ask. For me, it absolutely, I'm going to be the one, and our daughter's mother, of course, together. We are going to be the one that are going to educate our daughter on this kind of topic. But it almost happened just naturally because myself and her mother were very much in tune with nature and truth. We don't lie about anything. We don't hold back on the conversations that we have. My daughter absolutely knows what sex is and how children are made, etc., etc. So she came into adolescence and culture with already having that education of what it is. Parents get that topic of sex like it's, oh gosh, like, I'm not going to talk to my parents or to my child about that. They just don't want to do it. They want to avoid it. But by avoiding the topic, now you are opening up the potential and the possibility for culture and society, right, and the state to do that educating. And guess what? Like you were saying, there's an agenda. There's an agenda there to sexualize incorrectly and unethically children, right? So this is what they want to do. So it always comes with education, and the parents need to be at the forefront of that education, for sure.
Most certainly. And I can say, like, firsthand, like, my mom never had the conversation with me. We've never talked about it. And so my biggest influencers were my friends, my peers, and that was quite harmful. I mean, to say the least.
That's
Which
common
would
nowadays, right? I mean, now it's TikTok. TikTok, YouTube, the inner circle. It's like when we think of culture, culture is also the playground, right? Public schooling, the interaction with kids, kids' own little social circles. And I think that's where I remember even growing up, right? I mean, there was a huge push for sex even in my own circle and at school itself. But my dad and my mom already had these conversations with me. It wasn't a big deal. I already understood. I already knew. There has to be that level of sacredness as there as well, right? Like this is not just a feel good thing that's based in just physicality. There's the sacredness of sex and self love and self respect that come with it.
Mhm.
So sex nowadays in modern culture is just looked at as like a dopamine rush.
Most certainly,
Yeah.
most certainly, and that's like that goes hand in hand with the hookup culture, and how. Oh, I mean, I'm sure men do this, but because I just know a lot of women, women with kids, like I don't think they have the proper education of understanding the sacredness of sexuality and have multiple partners, and like not that they're having multiple partners in front of their children, but they're bringing these partners in their child's reality. So like even if your kid is little, they're still picking these habits and these beliefs up, which again comes with like we need to one properly educate ourselves what sex is and the sacredness of it and how destructive we have turned sexuality to, and we need to not be so scared to talk to our children about this. And I mean, even at an early age we need to start introducing concepts like this, because not just that, there are people who will harm your children in sexual ways, and they need to understand that they have autonomy over their body and that they are not of the age to be in these acts.
Mm-hmm.
And so when, like I was talking about, when I was in high school, teen mom and 16 and pregnant, and the movie Juno came out. So the push for, having like babies at a young age, like people kind of like thrived for it. It wasn't like it accidentally happened. Like I know a lot of women who were young who were intentionally trying to get pregnant. But again, a child, even if you are in your teenage years, you are still a child. You cannot be raising a child when you still have a life to live.
Yeah.
And so let's start making these conversations of sex a normal thing that we give to our children so that they are best prepared for the reality of world, especially when it comes to, the overexposures in our media. And so kind of on the topic of, sex and having unplanned children, is kind of like the normalizations of broken home, which is a huge topic. I mean, can cover anywhere between single parent home, absent parent, teen pregnancies, to the authoritative relationships between parent and child, to overworked and stressed parents. Is like now I understand that things happen and sometimes these things, come about. But the problem is that we're normalizing it and we are moving farther away from what a traditional family is supposed to look like into more of what a toxic family is. And so a family that is is mutually respectful and loving, and that's where we build strong relationships where individuals feel safe, supported, and empowered. But when the home is broken, this can add extra stress to the parents and to the children. When the household is out of balance and there is an unspoken authoritative structure set up, then the child will take this as truth and apply it in their life. So, in a healthy home, there's no higher authority over anyone. But in a broken home, when there is an authoritative structure, um, Children learn to fear us and feel like they must obey us, which they take this as a mindset and either push this onto other people or then look for authoritative figures for themselves who they think knows better for them, which is very dangerous in the long run.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure. Again, this is what the social engineers want to promote, and the the relationship that a child is going to have between mother and father is going to set the tempo for the child's relationship with other individuals, right? This is the anima and the animus. My daughter, her self-respect and self-love and her relations towards men is going to be a it's going to be a fractalization of the relationship that she and I had. And obviously, the same goes for son and mother, and daughter and mother, and son and father. So the breakdown of these relationships, which are really, the social engineers and culture, it's just the influencer. The parents' ignorance, they are the ones that are culpable. They are the ones that are performing the action or the inaction. So that the lack of that, knowledge and relationship, this is what is promoting, the child to grow up and do the same thing to their kids, right? So it's just continuing the cycle of generational trauma and mind control. And absolutely, I mean, you said it beautifully.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, I mean, again, like I said, there's so many agendas that are pushed that kind of destroy the family unit. But I want to start talking, about some solutions and how we can become better parents and raise awesome children and create a better world for them and all who inhabit this beautiful, amazing planet. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the true roles of parent. And oftentimes, like, we there is this authoritative structure in the house where, like, do as I say, because I said so. I'm the parent, you are the child, you must respect me and everything. And yes, a child should respect their parents, but we also need to respect our children as well, because they are individuals just like us, and they deserve mutual love and respect. So for me, the true roles of a parent is to know that we are guides and guardians, and we are not their rulers and we're not their controllers. We are supporters. We are here to encourage our children to be themselves authentically, to pursue their passions, and to fulfill their dharmas. We are also their defenders. We must at all costs be willing to stand up and defend our children against all threats. And we are their educators. We must realize that we are our children's first teachers, and they depend on us to give them the proper knowledge and tools so that they can lead and think for themselves. Did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Ditto. You said it. You said it so well. That was great. I'll just add. I'll simplify a couple things. Everything you said, I agree with 100%. Very, very well articulated. We are here to give the tool sets of natural law and objective morality to our children. And the three principles I talk about: natural law, the laws of nature, how the laws that govern reality, right, and our own selves; the trivium, learning how to think; and objective morality. That's the curriculum right there. Those are the three objective principles that a parent needs to uphold, embody themselves, and educate their children. So you have a child that has the capacity and the know-how to recognize conscious and exercise conscious, meaning right action, to become a moral human being. This is what raising a child's awareness ultimately is, simplified in 1 minute. And this is the natural rights, the sovereignty, the autonomy. It's a beautiful process. But yes, like you were saying, there's respect there that needs to be understood and looked upon, right? a lot of parents nowadays see their child as property. That is a huge, that's folly right there. That's completely incorrect. Like you were saying, we are the stewardships and the facilitators of a young being, an individual, and we are there as caretakers, right? This is what stewardship means. It means entrusted to one's care, to raise them up, provide, protect, give them the skills so then they can leave the nest and they're fully autonomous. So,
Right. Our job as parents is to prepare our children to be morally thriving and happy individuals so that they can live their life, fully understanding their autonomy, their independence, fully being authentic and being themselves, not just a carbon copy of everybody else. So, we're almost
exactly.
done, guys. I just want to give for me 8 tips to become conscious parents. And so the first tip is self ownership, which means to take ownership and responsibility for yourself, which is achieved through self awareness, inner work, and having the courage. If you haven't done this, then you have not gained ownership of yourself. And if you do not have ownership of yourself, then you will not be able to teach your children the importance of self ownership. The second tip I have is you have to reparent yourself. You must heal your wounds and your triggers. You must show up for yourself like your parents should have. You must forgive your parents because they are human too, dealing with the same BS that we are all dealing with at some degree. The third thing to become a conscious parent is you must educate yourself. You must allow yourself to go down the rabbit hole with an open mind and don't run away from the truth of things. In order for change, we must be willing to face our fears and the ugly truth with courage. And you may learn a thing or two which can change your life in the way that you show up for your children. The fourth tip I have is getting honest about how you are showing up for your children. Being a conscious parent is more than making sure our children have good grades, fed every day, have a roof over their heads, and giving our children whatever they want. We need to take less focus out of this and put more focus into the quality times that we give them, what we are teaching them, what we are preparing our children for, and as well as instilling quality values and principles, as well as developing strong self-concepts so that they know who they are and feel confidence in that awareness. The fifth tip that I have for you guys is to build healthy, loving, mutually respectful relationships with your children. We are only their guardians and they are not our property. They deserve the respect that we ask for others for ourselves. They deserve the respect that we ask of others for ourselves. When a child grows up in this kind of relationship, then they are most likely able to develop strong, healthy, respectful relationship with themselves and with others. 6, we to become a conscious parent, you must defend your family at all costs in order to protect them, support them, and raise your children the way you know is best. The seventh tip to becoming a conscious parent is to find the right support. Thank God for the internet, and we have the ability to find other like-minded individuals all over the world. So don't feel like you're limited to your circle. The eighth tip for becoming a conscious parent is having compassion for yourself. We are all figuring out the best ways to be parent. We don't always get it right and we make mistakes, but the important thing is to hold yourself in compassion and allow yourself to unlearn and relearn. Oh, I have another tip. So the ninth tip to becoming a conscious parent is to start slow and don't stop. Conscious parenting is a journey and you are constantly learning, applying, and adjusting. The best thing you can do is to see it through. And so that is all I have. Do you have any other tips, tricks that you would like to give to the people to become conscious parents?
That was excellent. Well done. Yeah, I'll just rattle off a few. Respond instead of react. Discipline is shown. Discipline is not spanking. Discipline is shown by your own example and behavior. Education goes both ways, right? So embrace the student teacher dynamic, meaning your child is learning from you and you are learning from your child, right?
Certainly.
Never lie to your children. I tell my daughter this: I will never lie to you. Speak the truth to your children, okay? Regardless how, if it's a hard truth as well, speak the truth. Play, right? Embrace their imagination, promote imaginative play, and don't lose that, that childlike innocence that we all have in our very essence, in our soul, in our being. So play is a big one. And fight for your family, fight for your children to the death if need be. So those are the ones I'll add.
Those are excellent points to add. Yes, be there presently for your kids. It goes such a long way. Like for me, I have a hard time, tapping into that inner child and playing. I am a very serious person at times, but my children, they break me out of that. And then I find that I end up having more fun than my children are having fun. So
Yeah,
they really do value that quality time that you spend with them. And it takes nothing but a few moments of your day to make the time for them. But
absolutely.
would you like to add any more before we end this live?
I mean, fantastic chat. You're amazing. I love the work that you're doing. And in this discussion, I mean, you brought forth some excellent, excellent knowledge. And I just, I wish all parents to continue to follow your work and educate themselves. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Will. And thank you for everybody who joined this live. And thank you for everybody who will see this live in the future. You guys are amazing. You guys can do this. Until next time, guys, take care. If Will, you would give your, where people can find you at one more time.
Yeah, I'll send everyone to my link tree. So Linktree/Will Keller. You can find me there. I'm also on the One Great Work Network, Natural Freedom League, and Freedom Under Natural Law. But go to my link tree and you can get to all my platforms. Thank you, Bianca. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great evening and enjoy your day.